What were the strangest rules your parents had while you were growing up? Or what were some innocent things you did that you got punished for? I got grounded for setting epic pinball on our computer to 5 balls, beating my dad's high score every time he would set a new one, then setting it back to 3 balls because I forgot to set it back to 3 balls once and he figured out what I was doing. Nice. I wasn't allowed to join theater class in middle school because my dad thought I would turn gay. Jokes on him. I'm gay regardless. I had to go bed at 9 until I was 17. Then I could be up until around 1030 without being nagged or yelled at. Now my younger, 13-year-old sister stays up until 1130 and nothing gets said at all. Why do parents enforce all the rules on the eldest and then almost let the youngest get away with everything? 1. They realize that whatever the rule was that it meant nothing. 2. They are tired of being helicopter parents and want a little bit of their life back. For a short period of time my mom thought I was a lesbian. I was a freshman in high school and 14 years old, around that time that people go through the phase of sending song lyrics to people via text. One of my friends sent me a text saying I wanna frick you like an animal man. This was also the day I left my phone in the car, and my mom took it upon herself to read it. She then sends a text to my friend Tel Krajutniak I have her phone and she's in deep crap when she gets home. I get home. My mom took the day off of work and is a sobbing mess. My dad tells her she's being stupid. I have a boyfriend and was a regular boy crazy teen. I show her the song lyrics as proof and she says well what the frick is, and then I show her the artist, 9 Inch Nails, and then some of their products that say nin. No go. For the next 3 years or so I had a strict curfew when hanging out with girlfriends. But if out with my boyfriend there usually wasn't a curfew. If I was at a co-ed party curfew was usually a little later but was set. I did not understand any of this. My dad thought she was being psychotic as well. I think she was even happy when she figured out I wasn't a virgin anymore because it meant I really was attracted to men. I love my mom, but she is crazy. Despite living in a very safe town of less 400 people, I wasn't allowed to walk anywhere farther than the mailbox because my mom thought people would think I was a witch. I didn't understand how to cross a street with a red light, the little traffic signals with the hand and person, until my boyfriend explained it a few months ago. I'm 22. If I ever called someone on the telephone, I had to be the last person to say goodbye, apparently. If you call someone and let them be the last person to say bye when ending the conversation, it is extremely rude. I would be grounded whenever caught or appearing to not be the last person to say bye on a phone conversation I had initiated. It would be awesome if your best friend's parents had the same rule. I wasn't allowed to use the front door. My dad, stepmom, and little brother, he was a toddler at the time, used the front door regularly, but I was required to come and go through the back. Oh, and I wasn't allowed to walk through the yard either. When traveling between the back door and the street, I had to walk on the neighbor's property. The first time I ever found out about that particular rule was when I got in trouble for breaking it. One of my chores was to take the trash out every morning. I had to put it in the neighbor's trash can instead of ours. I pointed out that this was illegal and I could get in trouble, but my stepmom didn't care. Oh, and I wasn't allowed to shake open the new trash bag. I had to leave it all stuck together when I placed it in the bin. For some reason, that one annoyed me way more than the others at the time. Son, if you have any questions, you should come talk to me about it. Dad, I have a question about this. Why are you asking me? You can figure it out on your own. Okay, I'll give it a shot. No, you're doing it wrong. Why didn't you come ask me for help? Pretty sure this is every single dad ever, just so you know you're not alone. My parents bought me a Game Boy, the clear case 4AA1. They only allowed me to play it in the car. So, and like other kids I never looked out the window when we were going somewhere. This was the only time I could play Mario Land, and to this day I have a poor sense of where things are in my own hometown. I grew up in a family with 3 boys, no girls. It was only much later in life that I learned that the first person to fart at the dinner table does dishes was not a normal rule. One of the many fricked up things my dad used to do. My stepmom, dad and I were all swimming in the pool one summer. I was 14-15 and was constantly doing somersaults into the pool. Apparently I kept splashing him, so I was told to stop. So I began to dog paddle in the deep end to avoid getting any droplets near him in the shallow. When I splashed him with a huge wave, I did not. He then got out of the pool, yelled, "Stupid bee," and threw a plastic lawn chair at my head. I ducked underwater to avoid being hit and luckily was fast enough. When I resurfaced, I saw that the force had completely ripped the chair in half. Scared the crap out of me. Later that night my stepmom forced me to apologize to him for getting him wet, even though he was already soaked because he was in a freaking swimming pool. Among many other fricked up reasons, I no longer talk to him or my stepmom. I'm glad you got out of there. That's freaking insane behavior to me. Once I threw up in the car on a family vacation and a mandarin orange section came out. After that my siblings would say mandarin orange and laugh hysterically. My father implemented a rule that anyone using the phrase mandarin orange got fined $1 for each mention. Every Friday one of my friends would have a party for our group. My parents finally extended my curfew to midnight and I had the drive home timed exactly. It was like a 3-minute drive, and even if I left late I could just speed and make it there okay. Every Friday my dad would be sitting on the couch waiting for me. I would be there at 12 AM on the dot and he would yell at me for cutting it close and how I should get home 10 minutes early to be safe. I explained that my friend lived a mile and a half away and that if he wanted me home at 11:50 he should change my curfew to 11:50. He never did though, and eventually got over it. He was weirdly strict about some things. I used to get yelled at if I got up in the middle of the night to get a drink or something. I learned how to be real quiet in the later years. Like I had this weird way of walking and down our stairs to avoid the creaky ones. Toward the end of high school I had a couple friends that would call me really late and be all over their house getting snacks or other things. I would ask why their parents weren't yelling at them. Yeah, apparently other people's parents don't care. I had the special way of walking down the stairs too. I had to hold the banister and jump the first two, then always avoid the second to last one because it creaked the most. My dad was a bear when you woke him up, so I had to be super careful. My parents were pretty good, but my mom was definitely a bit overprotective. One example, I wasn't allowed to ride my bike past our house until I was 12 or so. It wasn't completely crazy because we lived on a rural street where drivers would routinely exceed the 35 mph limit, but it's not like I was Mr. Freaking Magoo. I could see here when a car was coming and do my best to not get run over. This might not seem like a big deal, but we lived nowhere near a walkable neighborhood and there were no kids on my street. So unless someone's mom, or mine, was willing to take a drive, it was near impossible for me to find anyone to play with. Nothing sadder than a redneck kid trying to teach himself tennis by hitting a ball against the side of a barn. Nothing sadder than a redneck kid trying to teach himself tennis by hitting a ball against the side of a barn. No matter how much you practice tennis, you will never be better than a wall. I played against a wall once. That thing was freaking relentless. I'm just going to say a lot of things that weren't worth the abuse my parents heaped on me and leave it at that. Thank goodness they disowned me. I owe them nothing. When I was 15 my father beat me into unconsciousness because I had skipped school. He told my mother that I had challenged him to a fight after she found me. She grounded me for a few weeks and called me weak and sad. When I was 7 or so I used to disassemble old electronics because they fascinated me. I mistook my mother's calculator for an old one and broke it down. She found the parts and flew into a rage and informed me that I would never be a scientist or anything that involved intelligence and that I should give it up. I never did it again. I have more stories but I don't want to think about them. I got in trouble for helping people and being curious about people less fortunate than me, or WE the frick that means. I was also taught never to give someone in need anything. Now I don't like to do things unless it helps other people, so I guess it was a lose-win. Seriously though, anyone out there that looks down on people who want to give money or food to those in need, I hope you die of cancer. My grandma is like this for some reason. She's also pretty xenophobic. When she was growing up, Minnesota didn't have many people other than whites and Indians, so she is just weird around anyone of a different race. I'm sure we've all heard it before, but this was the worst. But mom, why can't I do X? Because I said so. The inner rage that this caused. Saying that was the easiest way for my mom to eventually get P off at me. Once I heard that statement, I absolutely refused to shut up until I got my reason. Many times, I knew the reason she was giving me was complete bulls, but I drop it at that point because I was at least given a reason. Well, this isn't an innocent thing I got punished for. When we were kids, and my parents knew one of us did something, they would put us each into our rooms until the guilty person confessed. However, when that kid confessed, my parents wouldn't be all that angry since at least the kid was honest. I was about 4-6 years old, and my brothers were 5-7 and 8-10, can't quite remember, when I put a pillow on a lamp. I was too young to know better, and didn't really understand that such actions might lead to fires. Luckily, my dad caught it in time, and only the pillow was ruined. My dad had no idea who started it, so he sent us all off to our separate rooms. Knowing how the system worked, I kept my mouth shut, and waited one of my brothers to get bored and take the blame. The eldest claimed he did it, thinking he wouldn't get in all that much trouble, since my dad thought the oldest was an arsonist, and not just a stupid little kid. My brother ended up being grounded for a month. TLDR. My parents' confessional system caused me to get away with nearly setting the house on fire, while my older brother took the blame. Your father is secretly a sociologist, and was performing a prisoner's dilemma experiment involving you and your siblings. When I was about 10, my brother and I had each gotten our own computers. My dad built computers as a hobby. I was surfing on the internet, well, as much as a 10-year-old can surf the internet, and I stumbled onto a P website. I brought my friend over, and we were laughing at the P, giggling and such. I was a 10-year-old girl and I didn't know any better. My parents found out, the history function gave me up, and I was promptly grounded. I remember the talk my parents had with me. Instead of explaining how the P site was not the most appropriate thing for my age, and exactly what freaking and those things were, they told me that girls who did that type of thing turned into H. I was pretty freaked out. I used to think I was going to go to heck for it. Also, my dad took the internet away for the next 3 years from me and my brother because of that incident. Yep. I wasn't allowed to subscribe to the Disney Channel magazine in elementary school because it wasn't Christian. Also, my sister and I weren't allowed to watch Rugrats because my mom didn't like the way they spoke to each other. My parents got tired of my little sister always locking her door. At one point they decided to remove all the doors to our bedrooms and bathrooms. I am the middle of 3 girls, all born in the early 80s. My parents were deaf on what they called boy shows. I couldn't watch Transformers, G.I. Joe, Thundercats, He-Man, etc. I could only watch girl shows, which led to oddities like my being allowed to watch Era. I would get in trouble for sneaking morning cartoons from the non-approved list. My parents were never able to satisfactorily describe to me why they had this rule. They always mumble something about violence, but change the subject when I point out that most of my girl shows had the same level of violence, just more sparkles. I half think because we were all tomboys, my parents were terrified the 3 of us were gay. Luckily, my parents have since come around and are pro-LGBT. 1. Wasn't allowed to play Zelda. Link to the Past until parents viewed it and approved it. After 5 minutes, my dad was like, I thought this was about dark magic and demons. It's actually kind of cute. He then sat with me for the 4 days it took to finish it, yelling, no, that way, use the magic. 2. Wasn't allowed to watch G.I. Joe, Transformers, or Simpsons. Too violent and sarcastic for my young mind. I was, however, allowed to watch Knight Rider, Airwolf, Kaipees and MacGyver. I also learned about murder every time they blasted Law and Order through the TV after my bedtime. 3. As far as my parents were concerned, the internet was a wretched hive of scum and villainy. I had never been online until '98 when I got to my dorm room in college for my freshman year of computer engineering. That makes for a heck of an introduction. I know C++, but what is this internet you speak of? When I was little, my mom forced me to eat a slice of American cheese every day. I freaking hate American cheese. I would roll them into little balls and hide them in random places around the house. One time my mom found a cheese ball in her shoe and beat the living heck out of me. I am Asian. Oh gosh, this reminded me of something. When I was younger I hated hot dogs and would hide them in a gap under the table. It had a slot for an insertable leaflet, and it was the perfect place to hide them. Well, of course, we were having company over, so my parents opened up the table, and to their surprise there was a good 7+ old, dried up, moldy hot dogs hidden in there. Laughs were not had. This turned from an innocent funny story sharing to a morbid study of bad parenting. It's exactly why I will never have children of my own. I know I am too fricked up to pass on my behaviors to another person, so I am not going to. Parenting is tough and the possible repercussions too high to just wing it. My mom would always buy double the order at fast food restaurants so that she'd have something to shove down her throat the next day. Well, this time it was Burger King. I ate the burger instead. When she got home, she flipped. Crap. I remember how ridiculous it all sounded. So I started laughing, couldn't help it, and said, "It was just a burger." To which she screamed at the top of her lungs, "No, it was a Whopper apparently. I wasn't specific enough." Another time, I made dinner for the family. My dad was getting home late, so my mom and I ate. My mom went first, then me. Then my mom comes back in after a while and starts yelling at me that I took too much food. The most memorable statement in that episode was, "What's your father going to eat? There's just enough here for my second helping." I stirred up some strawberry preserves once. Due to the separation, I wanted to reintegrate the juice with the jam, and my parents grounded me on the spot for 2 weeks. Never told me why. Happened junior year in high school, 6 years ago. Also, I used to play this dumb MMO called Tibia, and if I asked my parents to play it and they said yes, they would ground me if I also logged onto AIM. Roughly 8 years ago, 22 now, at the same time. Conversely, if I asked to go onto AIM and then played Tibia at the same time, I would also receive the same punishment. Their rationale: we give you an inch, them allowing me one or the other, and you take a mile, me doing both, with zero effect on anybody. I don't know how these stack up, but they kind of stick out as being the dumbest, most draconian crap ever. You better not even think about using your headset in that video game. I got in trouble for telling my kindergarten class about the stacks of $100 bills my dad kept in his safe, and that it was all drug money to be used to buy a Learjet. I have loved reading ever since I was a kid, so for punishment, my mom would take away my free reading books, so I would then turn to textbooks like history or English, which made my mom take away those two and only allow me to use them under supervision. I got on here to whine about my parents selling my drum set when I went in the military. You're grounded. After my mother discovered I had dug out a nice juicy fudgy chocolate vein of goodness out of a gallon of ice cream. You deserved it. My parents are hippies and only had 2 rules. Keep a B average in school and don't get arrested. I got arrested once, released on sight, and didn't really get in trouble because it was the first time in 18 years I broke a rule. They didn't ground me because I was going to college and I don't even know if they knew how. Strangest thing I got punished for. Got paddled with a cutting board because I was like 7 or 8 and refused to shake a black guy's hand because I didn't want it to rub off. As I remember, that was also the day I accidentally karate chopped the cutting board, and the times they did it since then could be counted on one hand. I was at a friend over for a sleepover and we were just beasing in the TV room watching who knows what. For some reason, we had a bunch of Hershey Kisses, and he is telling me that you shouldn't just chomp down on the things, but rather just put them in your mouth and suck on them, letting them melt. I just kind of ask back, so you just suck or something to that effect. My mom was walking down the stairs at that exact moment, heard the word suck come out of my mouth, which, if put into the correct context, I wasn't allowed to say, in the wrong context, and I got in trouble right in front of my friend. I was just so baffled at that moment that I didn't even argue with her. I think my friend felt the same. My dad was super strict about not opening the basement door. I was threatened with the most dire consequences if I touched the door. I was terrified about what was on the other side. One day, he had to leave for a few hours more than normal and I became really curious about it and what was there. Was he hiding something? Was there something scary on the other side? I crept up to the door and listened for something and it was quiet. So I knew where he hid the key and unlocked the door and opened it up and went through. My eyes really blinked in the bright light of the outdoors. It really was a bit scary with birds and people and clouds and all. It might just be the late night getting to me, but I'm pretty sure this is the plotline to one of the Goosebumps stories, which I had to read behind my parents' backs. My dad is very volatile and still freaks out at me for little things. I am 22 living with him while I finish my last semester of college, planning on moving out ASAP afterward. There are countless things I can think of that apply here, but one I remember. We had horses we kept on land a couple miles from our house, and when I was 12 or 13 I got a Game Boy for Christmas. Once I went with my dad to do something down there while my mom was at work, and I dropped a game cartridge in the field, probably fell out of the truck. I must have been pretty sure where it was, and I realized it when we got home and told him. He got explosively mad and pretty much threw me in the car so we could retrieve it. I don't remember how long it took me to find it, but I do remember that on the way back home I was bawling like crazy. Yelling is his specialty, and I've always been sensitive to that. Wonder why. And he accelerated too fast on the dirt road, fishtailing the two-wheel drive truck. We almost slid off the road and down a 50-foot embankment. Thanks, Dad. I accidentally somehow hit or bumped my sister when I was about 3 and she started crying. She was still a baby. My mom asked me if I did it on purpose. I hesitated then replied that yes, I did. Then she smacked me and I started crying. The thing is, I was 3 and didn't know what doing something on purpose or not meant. I still give her crap about that one to this day. I could only drink 1 glass of milk with dinner, and if I had something that could have syrup added, I could only use a silver dollar-sized amount of syrup. Jokes on you parents. I easily go through a quarter gallon of milk a meal now, and my pancakes always swim in syrup. I think I have the same problem. I got into a fist fight with my dad once for taking my little brother's side in an argument. I'm 20 and my bro is 16. My dad was yelling at him because he works too much and doesn't spend enough time with the family. Freaking hate family time. No rock albums, no Simpsons, Pokemon, pretty much any TV at all. Going to church every week. No ketchup, mayo, mustard, no Coke, no fast foods, no fries, no alcohol in the house. We had a pool we weren't allowed to use without permission. No staying out past midnight ever till I was like 20. Other than that we had to be extremely formal on the phone even if it was just our friends calling. We were never allowed to go on sleepovers, school trips, or any trips with friends or anything like that. We also got beat up pretty often especially because of these dumb little weekly reports on our behavior that my high school had. Teachers would write anything in those things. They didn't really care about kids having to deal with their crazy parents afterwards. My friends were also only allowed on ground level. Other than that I had an okay childhood. Dios mio. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.